Alright, well, I mean, there's not really that much to talk about as of the time of me recording this video, so I guess we'll just take a look at this update by this guy named Quinthio. Apparently there's a Mizkif lawsuit update. If you guys remember, back in November, I did a video on Mizkif, and it was about how he was suing Emiru, Asmongold, and OTK. He has absolutely no case. I think it's like some form of a defamation lawsuit. And in case you guys don't know, like, Mizkif, we've already covered, like, the Mizkif allegations against Emiru. Like, he horrifically abused the shit out of Emiru, and it was just, like, absolutely awful. And now Mizkif has kind of, like, fallen to the dark side, and he's decided to stream on Twitch. I mean, Kick. He's moved to Kick. So, yeah, I guess he's right where he belongs. But apparently there's, like, an update that there might be, like, a dismissal in the Mizkif lawsuit. So, let's go.
Mizkif's ongoing lawsuit against Emiru, Asmongold, and OTK has taken yet another interesting turn. Asmongold is attempting to dismiss the case, or
Interesting. I mean, like, here's the thing. I don't think Asmongold should be worried because, one, Mizkif has no case, and two, like, as much as I don't like Asmongold, Asmongold has a lot of money, so he can hire I can imagine Asmongold can hire a pretty damn good lawyer. So I don't think I'm, like, too worried for Asmongold necessarily.
the very least, his part in it. His team is claiming that not only has Mizkif admitted to what they believe Mizkif is referencing as these defamatory statements that Asmon might have made, they're also claiming that Mizkif has failed to identify malicious intent or falsity to anything that Asmongold has said. And strangely enough, they're also claiming that Mizkif is not actually being identified in the lawsuit. Now, I know that sounds...
That is very... I mean, to be fair, like, that's honestly just not that surprising when you really think about it. And the reason I say that is because I remember covering, like, in that, like, 15 minutes of shame video that we watched on the original coverage of the Mizkif lawsuit, that when I was, like, reading the actual legal documents, you could tell that Mizkif did not get the best lawyer to write that. Either Mizkif, like, asked ChatGPT to write it for him, or the lawyer he hired just fucking sucks. Because reading through that, I was like, yeah, there's no way this lawsuit has any weight whatsoever. But I mean, it seems like they are going to go to court for it. Asmongold's trying to get the case dismissed off of his end. I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I'm not too worried for Emiru or Mizkif or Asmongold, because, like, if they try to prove any form of defamation is difficult to prove, and I've seen cases where even in false allegations from defamation, even it's hard to prove defamation even in those cases. So if it's hard to prove defamation there, with an allegation that's pretty fucking credible, how are you going to prove defamation with that necessarily?
Really strange, but I'm going to explain it here as we go through. Before we jump in, really quick, obligatory, 80% of you are not subscribed to the channel. Don't get me wrong, I'm a news channel. I understand some people just tune in because they're interested in what specific topic I'm covering, but I've also noticed this new metric here, new viewers, casual, and regular, and we've got 45% of you have checked out my channel in up to 5 months over the past year. If you're one of those people that just have happened to see me show up on the homepage enough that maybe you just are convinced that you're subbed, consider checking, making sure, or regardless if you do any of that stuff, just thank you for watching my video. Now, to get things started here,
all right, good stuff. And I guess before we get into it, I'm gonna take the time to plug my own thing. Guys, go check out the Iconismus TikTok, Iconismus_. For those of you guys who don't know what my TikTok is, it's always in the description of the video below, and you can also just search it up on TikTok. It's the profile picture with the wolf here, which is just one of the default YouTube profile pictures that I have now claimed. Fuck you, YouTube. You guys can watch this obnoxious Kick streamer who decided to do a prank on a random guy and then she fucks around and finds out. You could watch a clip on Shy Lily. A lot of these clips, for the most part, are exclusive clips that you won't see in my long-form content, and I've been trying to plug the TikTok as much as possible. So if you guys are not already following me there, I'm kind of convinced that I'm shadow banned at this point. So any form of support on TikTok would be very appreciated. I'm trying to get as much exposure as I can. You guys can watch a short on this guy getting fired. And then he just says the N-word with a hard R in it. It's censored, luckily. You could also watch a ton of Asmongold coverage, and you could watch, like, a nose ring theory TikTok. So what are you guys waiting for? Go on TikTok, search up Iconismus_. Go follow me there. Any kind of support is appreciated. Liking my TikToks, retweeting, following, all that good stuff, just to get me out into the atmosphere on TikTok. I would seriously appreciate it if you guys could consider it. And yeah, that's it.
We have something that was just filed January 8th, so at the time we're recording this yesterday, the time you guys are seeing this about 2 days ago, and this is defendant Zach Hoyt's motion to dismiss. And for those who don't
Zach Hoyt is Asmongold.
know, Zach Hoyt is Asmongold. Asmongold was also included as someone who Mizkif is suing for defamation. Now, right away, we can see that thing I was talking about this individual, Matthew Ronaldo, who we've been seeing referred to and what we believe to be Mizkif from all the previous videos I've done covering this.
Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure it's confirmed that that is, like, Mizkif's real name, right?
See down here that they mention Hoyt questions both the identity of the individual plaintiff and whether the proper individual plaintiff is before the court.
Well, that's kind of silly because, like, we know it would be Mizkif. I think a better question to ask is, I mean, I guess Asmongold is, like, taking, like, the legal strategy route to try to, like, poke holes in, like, the narrative to see if that's the case. But, like, Mizkif is, like, again, Mizkif has some pretty fucking credible allegations levied against him, so I don't know, like, how he's going to try to prove defamation in, like, a court of law setting. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Defamation is already difficult to prove as is in America, even in, like, legitimate defamatory cases.
Interim, Asmon will identify the individual plaintiff as Mizkif. But continuing on with the summary of argument, Mizkif accuses Asmon of painting him as a domestic abuser and emotional abuser. Yet according to Mizkif himself...
Honestly, shout out to Quinthio for actually saying the word rape and, like, censoring it, because, like, there's a lot of people, especially on TikTok, who say SA or grape, and I think that's, like, very immature. Just say sexual assault or rape and then, like, censor the word. Like, people can be grown adults and say that, so honestly, good for Quinthio for actually being, like, a grown fucking adult about this.
And quote, you guys probably recognize this stuff, I punched holes in walls or slammed doors in aggression. And
yeah, no, this is basically in response to Emiru throwing plushies at Mizkif, which is, like, one of the softest objects you could think of. Which, honestly, like, Mizkif admitting this part makes him look even worse, because, like, at that point, like, if Mizkif has already lied about parts in his narrative, I feel like he would have been better off lying and saying, like, oh, Emiru threw, like, a fucking metal stick at me or something, or, like, a piece of metal at me, and so I punched holes in walls and slammed doors in aggression.
How nice of Asmon's lawyer, but they have timestamped everything, and here is, from Mizkif himself, the truth with the timestamp of that claim.
She would throw clothes or plushies at me, and I punched holes in the walls or slammed doors in aggression.
But moving forward, in quote...
Wow, so proportionate, Mizkif. That's a very proportionate punishment to having plushies thrown at you.
I'm not going to go back to the place I once was. I was suicidal, depressed, and taking every type of drug possible to fix my brain. And in doing that, I hurt myself more. I was on steroids because, et cetera, et cetera. And then they bold here. In doing that, I know I effed up so bad and hurt so many people around. I lashed out, I was angry and out of my mind. Continuing on, they just add a bit more emphasis to, I did take steroids and that gave me insane anger issues. And
wait, did Mizkif actually say that? Honestly, it wouldn't even surprise me if Mizkif was a bit of a steroid user. But, like, I didn't even know that was something he admitted to.
Quote, I said that if she goes after me, then I will go nuclear, and that is exactly what I said in...
Oh yeah, this part I remember he did say at, like, the beginning of, like, his response stream on Twitch. I think it was more along the lines, like, if you remember Emiru's testimony of it, Emiru, like, misheard, like, well, not misheard, sorry, she overheard, like, I think Mizkif was, like, saying, hey, if Emiru decides to go public with this, then I will run the narrative that, like, she abused her rabbits and was responsible for killing her rabbits, basically, which is, one, rabbits are sensitive creatures, so we don't know if Mizkif screaming and punching could have killed the rabbits, because they're very sensitive, from, like, the stress overload. It's possible Mizkif was the one that's doing it, and two, if Mizkif was an active threat in the house, how do you expect Emiru to take care of the rabbits if she puts herself in harm's way from Mizkif, essentially?
That is what is going to happen. And then they also include screenshots, which we've actually looked over before in the past too. This is Mizkif during an off time, like while he wasn't streaming, in his live stream chat, talking about how shrooms screwed him up and how he was like dunking his head into the pool, like trying to drown himself. I'll leave a link in the description to this.
Obviously this guy has mental health issues. I, like, understand that, like, it's, like, a thing, but that's not an excuse to go and fucking, like, emotionally abuse the fuck out of somebody or, like, abuse the fuck out of people. And apparently he was very abusive towards Maya as well, so There were like clips of that I was showing in my original Mizkif coverage.
Filing, because it also kind of does a good job of collecting a lot of the points that Mizkif had made himself, and they included them in this document because it's helping their argument. And they go on to explain like Asmon's role in this. Mizkif is a public figure who now complains that Asmongold, after listening to and reading Mizkif's own public statements, gave commentary about Mizkif's public statements. Mizkif, however, cannot give the court any of that context in a pleading, or it would be obvious that nothing he is upset about is actionable as a defamation claim. There's a little bit of sass with Asmon's lawyer here. Not surprisingly, plaintiff's suit fails to
I guess, I mean, to be fair, like I said, it's not surprising that Asmongold was able to get, like, a lawyer that's on point, because Asmongold has a lot of money, so I imagine Asmongold would look at, like, some of the best lawyers that he can get on this, so it's not surprising that Asmongold can afford a lawyer that knows his shit.
State a claim. Mizkif is a public figure suing another public figure for defamation. Mizkif is constitutionally required to prove the falsity of the statements being made about his own admissions, as well as proving actual malice by clear and convincing evidence, and yet he fails to even point out what the statements were. The complaint apparently doesn't include any of the alleged defamatory statements, aside from the aggressor and abuser. And so from how I understand it, keep in mind, I cover online YouTube drama, am not a lawyer. I hope a lawyer covers this. I think it's really interesting. But from my understanding, with the law, when it comes down to defamation and making claims against someone like this, you need to specify the exact claims that would defame you. Like the word.
Yes, absolutely. Which Mizkif, I believe, again, I don't remember all the details from the original legal papers that I read when I reacted to the 15 minutes of shame video. But, I remember, like, I vaguely remember that, like, they were making claims, obviously, it was there, saying that they labeled him as a rapist, abuser, all that stuff, but they didn't specify specifically where. And not to mention, like, if they don't specify specifically where, and they don't make any sort of, like, I guess, I think part of the reason why, and this is just me, like, reading between the lines a little bit, is that, like, if you go in depth with it and you say, like, where they gave the claim, it wouldn't be very difficult for the defense lawyers to look at that and go, okay, we'll look at the claim, and we see that the exact claim that they cited, Emiru, Asmongold, and everybody who covered the Mizkif drama would have cited a very specific point, and it would be easy to counter. So I feel like the strategy is that they tried to be vague about it so they wouldn't do that, but that also backfires your defamation lawsuit. So really, I mean, it goes back to what I said earlier, that, like, this is really just, like, a lose-lose for Mizkif. Like, I don't see how he could possibly win this case. He has, like, no case here whatsoever.
Words exactly. You can't just say, yeah, they were saying that I'm a sexual assaulter without, like, giving them the exact words that they had said.
And like I said, defamation is, like, really hard to prove in the U.S., so you gotta have your Q's and P's and T's and pussies crossed.
Asmon's lawyers are saying he never did that. They outline this by saying plaintiffs, I'm assuming Mizkif, neglect to give Asmongold or the court the statements as a whole, though, or even the better portion of it, or any source of it, or any date, time, or place it occurred. Both Asmongold and the court will need to evaluate each statement to see whether the statement is even actionable or capable of a defamatory meaning. And then Asmon's lawyer is saying that Asmon is fully expecting that they're just going to be pointing out, like, if they do outline these statements, they're just going to be opinions which are protected. That's not, defamation for you to have an opinion about somebody. Keep in mind that obviously Asmongold's lawyer is going to try to make the best and most convincing sounding argument because they're trying to get this dismissed and not deal with it. They might.
Yeah, and that makes sense from, like, a legal standpoint, but also you have to remember Asmongold's super rich and he can afford, like, a really good lawyer, so I knew, like, immediately that Asmongold would get, like, a really solid lawyer on this just because he had a lot of money.
I'd be making a phenomenal point that is absolutely dumpstering on Mizkif, or they might not, because I'm not a lawyer and I don't exactly know the particularities that surround that. Just want to make that clear now, because, it's their job to be convincing. They continue to outline this point a bit more, saying things like Asmon is entitled to know what the actual statements are. Obviously, you don't want to have Asmon or anybody else in a situation where they're being pressed for defamation.
Well, like I said, they're not actually going to list, like, the real point, or, like, the real specific point of origin that the claims came from. And like I said, my theory is that, like, Mizkif is trying not to signal boost that as much as possible so that the defense doesn't have, like, okay, since you cited it here, you'll see that in that exact point that you cited, there was like evidence that he got that from, because Asmongold reacted to Emiru's testimony in the original thing, based off what I remembered anyways. So like from a legal standpoint, there's no way, I don't know, man. Like I said, Mizkif's fucked either way. Like I legitimately think he is fucking himself over with this lawsuit. There's no possible way that this lawsuit even goes through. I legitimately think Mizkif is going to drop this case. Like he's going to quickly realize, yeah, you know what, like this is going to fuck me over. Like if Mizkif has any level of like, I guess like brains at this point, like he would just drop the lawsuit and realize, okay, I'm gonna cut my losses, I know I'm fucked, but instead Mizkif is gonna lose out more and more money to this lawsuit, and there's not really much he can say about it. And like there's like weird people online that are like coping, saying that like, oh, Emiru was also bad because she abused her rabbits, she neglected her rabbits. Okay, fucking moron. First of all, did you actually listen to any of the fucking story that she had to give? First of all, you obviously didn't pay attention to this outside of scrolling through Twitter clips and thinking that you're like the most knowledgeable in the situation. If you listen to Emiru's story, Mizkif was so much of a threat that, one, you have to remember rabbits are very sensitive creatures. And so, like, if any form of, like, disruptiveness or loud sounds, that could, like, add a ton of stress to the rabbits, and that could actually kill the rabbits. So who's to say that Mizkif's fucking slamming holes in the walls and punching doors and all that shit could have contributed to killing the rabbits? Who's to say? And not to mention, like, if Mizkif is that much of a threat, how do you expect Emiru to take care of the rabbits without running into Mizkif while he is an active threat in the house? How do you expect that? Like, how do you not know that, like, Mizkif wasn't the one who mainly contributed to it as well? And also, another thing, Mizkif making that claim that she neglected these rabbits, why didn't you do anything about it then, Mizkif, if you knew about it? It's almost like you're using this as ammunition, so that way, if Emiru said anything about it, you would run this narrative that's obviously fucking flawed in every way imaginable if you actually do any modicum of looking into it.
Not know exactly what they're, going to court over. Now, I think to best summarize this initial point here is down at the bottom here. For instance, Mizkif stated in the only publication Asmon thinks may be at issue that he hurt so many people, lashed out, and had steroid-fueled insane anger issues. Yet plaintiff claims it is somehow defamatory that Asmon believed Mizkif's own widely publicized statements about his own anger.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Mizkif literally admitted that he punched holes and slammed doors in aggression. Like, he admitted to being abusive several times, so, like, a lot of the coverage online is from Mizkif's own words and own retelling of the story. Yet, somehow, people think Mizkif is more on the right, which is, okay. I feel like anyone saying that is just, like, coping super hard.
Asmongold refuses, and the law agrees with him. Mizkif's invitation to get inside the head of an admitted angry, violent drug user who goes nuclear on people, and then try to guess what Mizkif characterizes as manipulating or hurting others. Basically saying Asmon is not...
It's a little bit of a projecting from Mizkif there, it seems.
Going to attempt to make an assumption of what claims a self-proclaimed, roid-raging, going nuclear dude is assuming to be defamatory statements. The well's already been poisoned, if you will. Now, here they go into the factual background, which is, again, just kind of like pointing out previous controversies with Mizkif that also seem to tie into, Mizkif's self-admitted acts of violence and being violent on steroids, things like that. They talk about the Mitch Jones fight that we had covered in last video, as well as the Nick one with NMP LOL. Mizkif admitted he had an incident with Nick, part owner of OTK. We've already talked about this. And then, of course, they mentioned the romantic...
Yeah, I mean, it seems like Asmongold's lawyer is, like, pretty stacked on this case. Like, it's just, like, this is gonna be, like, a non-issue. Like, at this point, like, they're gonna try to get the case dismissed as soon as possible, which, like, again, makes sense because, like, illegal cases are a huge headache for a lot of people. There's a lot of money, there's a lot of time that goes into them, and they could go on for years, even, like, quite frankly. I feel like Emiru is probably gonna fight this as much as possible, and honestly, like, I encourage her to, or if there's like a route that Emiru can take where she can get the case dismissed as soon as possible, she should go that route too, honestly. Like, it really, like, whatever helps her. I mean, either way, I think she's fine. Like, her retelling of the story has been pretty accurate. I would even argue that Emiru downplayed her own experience and actually, like, thinks that what happened to her wasn't like that bad or whatever. Like, well, sorry, it's a weird way that I framed it, but I do think that like in her own story, she was downplaying her own experience to try to make it like, I guess, better for herself maybe, or I guess like interpret it better, because like I imagine it's like very traumatizing, the kind of shit Mizkif did. And Emiru wasn't the only girl. There were apparently multiple other women that Mizkif did this to, so like he is legitimately, I don't think it's disproportionate to say that Mizkif is a threat to society. I don't think it's sensationalizing the story by saying that.
Relationship with Emiru, but I do kind of want to read how the lawyers have outlined it here. I just find it interesting because, again, they point out to things that Mizkif has said already in his response to Emiru's first statement. The lawyer writes, Mizkif was in a romantic relationship with Emiru that he claims was toxic and attempted to shift blame for violence by stating before any statement by Asmongold that his romantic interest, a very petite young woman, was also violent. Mizkif describes that violence.
Oh, yeah, the fucking violence was like throwing plushies. Yeah, okay, wow, that's so violent. She threw like the softest like object at you. Meanwhile, you punched holes and slammed doors in aggression, which is your own words, Mizkif. So, yeah.
Further, she would throw a plushie or clothing at him, though he admits to bruising her face by throwing things at her, slamming doors, and punching holes in walls. Now, they're directly saying that he admitted to bruising her face by throwing things at her. So let's see what that is exactly.
I mean, I'm pretty sure he, like, threw a phone at her and gave her a black eye. Like, that was Emiru's original retelling. And Mizkif, I'm pretty sure, like, lied in, like, his retelling of the story. He obviously was not, like, fully honest because he knows he's fucked and he has to, like, make it seem as charitable as possible, even though somehow he thinks that, like, punching holes in walls and slamming doors in aggression, he thinks that that's, like, a downplay of what he actually happened. So if that's Mizkif's interpretation of the story, it's gotta be worse than that, right? Like, if that's the stuff that he's willing to say out front.
She would throw clothes or plushies at me, and I punched holes in the walls or slammed doors in aggression. She brushed over that I threw water bottles or my phone near her, but that wasn't during fights. I want to make that very clear. It would be me throwing my phone on my bed when I brushed my teeth. She did tell me she got a bruise from it, and I stopped. That's all that happened.
I love that somebody in chat said porn acting.
Obviously, it just linked to him talking about the punching holes in walls, her throwing plushies. I actually had to go and find the bruise one. I don't think that they linked that part directly. And I think that they're saying that, yes, he admitted to tossing a phone in that, and she saying that that bruised her. I think the lawyers take...
No, I mean, they said that it gave her a black eye.
That as him confirming that he bruised her by throwing stuff at her. And so down here at the bottom, we start getting these bolded, numbered reasons, I think, the core reasons for why they are moving to dismiss the case with Asmongold and the defamation. First one we've already talked about. A plaintiff fails to allege facts sufficient to state a cause of action for defamation. So, like, you know, they're not pointing out any defamatory statements or statements that are not opinion. Now, the number two, this is where it's kind of interesting and really falls down onto me not quite understanding the law itself, because maybe this is a reference to dismissing the case outrightly. The reason I say this is because just in these first words here, plaintiff gives no allegations about the corporate plaintiff, which I believe is OTK, who is never mentioned regarding any statement by Hoyt, Asmongold, nor would there be reason to think that Asmon would be talking about, if even aware, of the alleged limited liability company. So I think they're talking about OTK here. They're saying that there's no defamatory statements that he's pointing out that have come from OTK. Asmon's lawyers are also saying that this might be stuff that is coming up from things more than 1 year after the initial publication, which is kind of going off of the statute of limitations. Usually when it comes to defamation and stuff, that is a 1 year policy. Like after 1 year, you can't go after them for defamation. I think this has to do with the fact that there's no, you know, definitive specific examples that Mizkif or his team gave in regard to Asmongold and these apparent defamatory statements that Asmongold has made towards Mizkif. For they're saying, well, Mizkif said this shit himself. Mizkif admits in his own words the very things he complains about, so the statements are incapable of being defamatory. That makes sense. Reading what their lawyer said versus what Mizkif has said exactly, they're definitely stretching a bit, it feels like. In some points, it does feel like, yes, he has straight up said these things, or at least he's said a lot of stuff that he's been violent, things like that, where it's just kind of...
I wonder if the strategy with, like, whoever Mizkif hired as a lawyer, who is probably not even that good to begin with, based off of, like, the first plaintiff that we've read. Whoever the, like, first lawyer that Mizkif hired, the strategy might be to, like, play semantics about what Mizkif said specifically, so that way they could find, like, I guess, holes to like downplay it and like just like play like use a bunch of like legal jargon to like say like, I don't know. It's hard for me to articulate specifically what I'm trying to say, but like I basically what I'm getting at is like off of things that Mizkif said in his response stream, they're gonna try to like poke holes to make it seem like it's not as bad in like the semantics way. If you've seen a lot of legal cases, some of you may know what I'm talking about. It's kind of hard to like explain and articulate it here clearly, but I wonder if that's like gonna be the strategy. I wouldn't doubt it.
Kind of like, well, it's not really defamation for them to make an assertion based off of what you've already claimed, that you've been very violent, you've been a roid head and have freaked out and have lashed out at people. It's not really a leap for Asmon to also jump in and have the opinions that he does. Number 5 here, something I've talked about at the very beginning here, plaintiff fails to allege facts sufficient to show actual malice or falsity. Now, this is probably one of the points I was more interested in because they say Texas law requires plaintiffs to show actual malice. And quote, a public figure already bears the substantial burden of proving actual malice by clear and convincing evidence.
Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Like with the whole defamation lawsuit is that like you have to actually like prove legitimately defamatory claims. And if you can't prove legitimately defamatory claims, you're going to have a tough time. That's why a lot of defamation lawsuits, even in like real cases of defamation, are an uphill battle. And you can't really... like a lot of them kind of just like get dismissed quickly, which kind of sucks, but what are you gonna do?
Now, they use the same point that they just did earlier to be like, how can you say that this is malicious if he's just going off of your own words and you were saying you did that shit? And they make mention briefly here of the sexual assault, which I also find interesting, and I'll explain that in a sec. Mizkif cannot fault someone for relying upon his own words in admitting that he is violent, uses drugs, is angry, aggressive, attempted to have sex with Emiru, and punches walls. Now, there's a big difference between, you know, alleged sexual assault and what Mizkif has said, which is that he attempted to initiate sex with Emiru, and he's saying that he backed off immediately when she expressed not wanting to do it. I think they're sandwiching this in between, you know, Miz admitting to being violent in different ways to try to maybe insinuate or just, you know, put it all up next to each other. I'm not here to defend Miz.
Maybe. I think it's possible, but it's not like... I mean, I guess. I wouldn't doubt it. I don't know.
Mizkif, but he has never, at least from the coverage that I've gone over, directly admitted to anything in regard to him saying that he knowingly assaulted Emiru. He explained...
Well, he kind of like hinted at it in his like original coverage. Like he said that I immediately like stopped and I like jumped off of her. That was his narrative. I don't think he's being fully honest with his retelling because he is like a provable liar. And obviously, like, whenever Mizkif retells his own events, he's going to try to make it, like, frame it in the most charitable way possible. But, like, even when you, like, look at the scenario, right, where Emiru and Mizkif, Emiru was, like, crying and she had tears running down her face, why does that turn you on? Like, why is the first thing you think of, like, hey, you know, I'm going to, like, make out with you and then, like, put my hands in your pants or whatever? Like, why is that the first thing you think of when a woman is upset? Like, that just doesn't make any sense. That just seems like even that is, like, inappropriate in itself. But, like, yeah, I mean, it is, like, a legitimate... Like, he attempted to rape her that night. Like, honestly. Like, that is, like, what that is. And, like, it's very clear that he didn't give a shit about her being upset or crying. Like, he was obviously trying to get in her pants. It's very, like, gross. And, like, I don't know. Like, good job, Mizkif. You didn't rape her that night. Wow. Good job.
That situation differently in his...
But, like, in a legal court of law, like, I'm sure that there's, like, ways that they could... like frame it in such a way to make it seem like he didn't sexually assault her,
claiming that that didn't happen. At the same time, maybe his lawyers are just trying to make the point that it is not a leap for Asmongold to agree to that idea, especially given the statements that Mizkif has made. Specifically, the thing I find most interesting is this bottom part here, plaintiffs must also show falsity. Earlier on in this document here, they're talking about this one potential statement that they think Mizkif's team might be referring to with defamation. They say here, for instance, plaintiffs complain about a statement regarding Mizkif and jail. Asmon can identify only one statement he made about jail. The comment was made during a long video commentary about Mizkif's own admissions. After playing videos of Mizkif's own admissions for Asmon's audience to see, a third-party member of his audience, so a viewer, asked Asmon whether he had any opinion as to whether Mizkif was done because of his own admissions and behaviors. Asmon offered an opinion and speculation in response. And Asmon said, I think that he should just take a break. He should just try to legitimately, just stop. I think that he will continue spiraling, and I think it might have already reached this point. But I think that it will reach the point where he ends up doing something that ends him up in jail straight up. I really do think that he should just take a break and calm down.
Yeah, like I said, the strategy that Asmongold's lawyer can use is be like, Asmongold is just speculating, and like he makes it clear that this is not like a fact. Again, like it literally says it here, so case in point. And like, I mean, again, this is why, like, because of legal cases like this is why you have to be careful with your portrayal of information online. And you say like, hey, this is just like speculation or whatever and all that stuff. You make it very clear, for reasons like this, because if you state something as a fact that's not true, it can get you in a defamation lawsuit and they can say, hey, this was like a legitimately defamatory thing. That's why you have to be very, very careful with the way that you word shit.
Nothing about that statement is defamatory. It does not even go so far as to advocate that Mizkif should be in jail, despite Mizkif's own admitted history of violence and drug use. I hope that...
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Mizkif's fucked. He needs to just, like, dismiss the lawsuits, because, like, he's really fucking himself over legally. The further that he, like, tries to pursue legal action against these people. He thinks that it's gonna help him, but it really is not gonna help him whatsoever.
Gives that a bit more context as why they included this. But again, overall, it's just you haven't proven that these things are false, so that can't be defamation if you can't prove that it's false or that he was acting maliciously. And now for the big reveal, the last point I was talking about, plaintiff Matthew Ronaldo is not a real person and or the proper party. It says...
It's interesting. I mean, isn't that, like, supposed to be his real name?
Plaintiffs failed to advise the court that the complaint was filed by someone other than the real plaintiff or that an alias is being used. Asmon knows Mizkif to be Matthew Joseph Misrendino, but he is not the named plaintiff.
Oh, that's interesting. Is Matthew Renato, like, an actual, like, alias that Mizkif used? Because if that's the case, then that really fucks him over. Not that he wasn't already fucked over already, but if this is, like, his, like, real legal government name in, like, the actual court of law, like, he's fucked. Like, this is, like, the final nail in the coffin for him, easily. And, listen, he was already fucked even if he didn't fuck this part up either way. But, like, it really goes to show that, like, Mizkif and his lawyer are just so fucking incompetent when it comes to pursuing this shit.
All parties deserve the most basic constitutional due process and knowing that they can obtain a judgment against the proper party, etc., etc. They go on to say, and I like how they describe it, just a little bit of bite. Mizkif's errors in nomenclature are fatal for at least two reasons. First, a plaintiff is required to be a real person in a proper party, according to rules. And second, Mizkif must show that the statements are about himself, and plaintiff's complaint, as pled, does not mention Matthew Joseph Misrendino or how the two are related. Now,
yeah, I mean, like I said, Asmongold's lawyer is obviously, like, on top when it comes to this. So yeah, he's probably an expensive lawyer for a reason. It's because he's very, very good.
I don't know how much of that is just a straight up technicality that will be immediately resolved, but I went ahead to take a look and found something interesting with what I covered in our previous video. Now this is OTK.
I didn't watch like any previous coverage on the Mizkif lawsuit, but again, there's not really that much to talk about, so I'm curious to see how this like lawsuit is doing, and I wanted to like give like a quick update regarding whether or not it's like still in effect. It seems like it is, but it's not going to be in effect for very long given how much Mizkif is completely fucked up here.
Case thing that we talked about trying to compel arbitration, and towards the bottom they included exhibits, and these were letters, documentation of communication between OTK and Mizkif, or as they referred to it, Matthew Misrendino. Additionally, at the bottom, it's signed by Matthew Misrendino. Now, admittedly, I just glossed over this while I was covering things because I didn't think that that would be something significant. You don't expect that someone is not using their correct name in legal documentation, or at least that they would have clarified that somewhere. But maybe that does end up being an important thing. I can't imagine that the entire thing would be thrown out simply because they weren't using the correct name. Moreover, I don't know specifically which...
I mean, it can. Like I said, in like a legal case, you have to have your Q's and T's and P's crossed, because if you don't, that is just one more thing that the defense can use against you and be like, oh, your story is flawed. That's going to be the strategy in like a court of law setting anyways, so...
one is the correct one. It seems like Misrendino has been the last name that he's been using for all the other documentation, but I guess we'll see. But that kind of closes out Asmon's attempt to dismiss this part of the lawsuit.
It seems like it's probably going to get dismissed, honestly. Like, I don't see Mizkif, like, at all winning this case whatsoever. I mean, we knew it was flawed the moment he filed this lawsuit anyways. It was like a last-ditch effort. And he really is fucking himself over by pursuing this lawsuit any further. Like, he obviously has no case. He's completely unstable. He's trying to maintain any level of relevance that he has by doing this and also by switching over to Kick. Mizkif is just a total fucking mess. And apparently he's becoming a father as well. I did like a whole YouTube short reacting to that clip where he's like becoming a father with like his new girlfriend literally right after the allegations came out about him. So I don't foresee Mizkif being oh jeez. I would certainly feel bad of the kid whose father is Mizkif. I wouldn't say that that is going to result in any good relationship. I wouldn't doubt that like Mizkif would be the type to abuse his own child, quite frankly. I honestly wouldn't doubt it.
Not the entire thing. I'm not sure again about that. I want to also mention while I was recording this, I also was able to identify a new update in regard to that compelled arbitration bit we talked about in the previous video. It appears that Mizkif's team is attempting to say that no compelled arbitration is not going to happen, and that has to do with some legal shit in regard to when a sexual assault claim is included as a part of a case. Apparently that can negate forced arbitration. I don't know the specifics of that. I'm going to attempt to reach out to a lawyer or two that I know of to see if there's any merit to that, maybe potentially do an interview to talk about that at length, so be on the lookout for that video. But I do want to just give you a heads up, if you stuck around to the end here, this is your little juicy tidbit. But that's it. Like I said at the beginning of this video, if you ended up enjoying this, consider subbing, leave a like, perchance a hype afterwards, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Adios, peace, bye.
Alright, that was an interesting way to end the video off. But yeah, solid update. You know, Quinthio seems like an okay content creator. I haven't really watched much of his stuff. He seems like another drama slop creator. So, I mean, gotta respect the slop grind, am I right?